bringing up. So you all know, and yeah, we're going to mute everyone. And I can unmute you. And Marc, I believe you have the floor.
Well, the question is whether I have the floor or the floor has me. But in either case, I'm absolutely delighted to present this feature today, which is the launch of spoKe, or the second part. Actually, there was the first part in the Grolier Poetry Shop last night, which was a hybrid show. I think Kevin can tell us a little bit more about that. But tonight, from that issue, we are featuring Helen Ivory from the UK, Wang Ping from St. Paul, and well, Delmore Schwartz via Ben Mazer, who resides in Cambridge, Mass. And we are absolutely delighted to have all of you. I'm also one of the features today, since my work features in spoKe, and Kevin Gallagher, the editor, will be handling the feature. Any first comments, Kevin?
No, Marc, just great to be with everyone at Lit Balm again, and excited to share for the second night in a row. We have such a big issue this year, 444 pages. We have to have 2 nights of openings. So excited to be here with all the folks you just mentioned, and we're going to have some fun and make a little history.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Okay. Well, on that note, I'm going to commence our standard Lit Balm proceedings, which starts with Jonathan, Cassandra, and myself each reading one poem, and then handing the feature over to Kevin. So first, I'm going to introduce my old friend Jonathan Penton, who founded unlikelystories.org in 1998. Unlikely Stories is an electronic journal of literature and art. I would say he's probably one of the older digital journals around now. And since then, he's lent editorial and management assistance to many literary and artistic ventures, such as Mad Hat, the New Orleans Poetry Festival, Rigorous, the Journal, and The Big Bridge, the Journal and Press. In 2005, he founded Unlikely Books, which publishes 3 to 5 books of poetry a year. He's organized literary performances and performed himself across the United States. His own poetry books are Last Chap from Virgin Press, Blood and Salsa and Painting Rust, Prosthetic Gods from New Sins Press, and Standards of Saturday from Litfest Press, and the free e-chapbook Backstories, which you can download from Argotist ebooks. What do you have for us today, Jonathan?
Thank you, Marc. So I've been working on a series of ekphrastic poems based on sculptures in the New Orleans Sculpture Garden. And this one is about Sacrifice 3 by Jacques Lipschitz. Sorry, I'm not used to working off the screen here. Okay. Hopefully you can see my face. And if not, you're probably better off. You have been called to sacrifice. Sharpen your blade and open your heart to the patience and love of Adonai. You split your consciousness in 2. You take your dog. You select an animal to send to the glory and love of Adonai. It could be a griffin or a sphinx or something closer to your heart. It could be something you can't afford to lose to the majesty that is Adonai. Do you recall, or does your memory interfere? Do you see yourself with your hands around a chicken's throat rather than the son you killed? All right. I am going to introduce our co-host, Cassandra Atherton. Cassandra is an award-winning writer, scholar of prose poetry, and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia. Her most recent books of prose poetry are Pre-Raphaelite, Leftovers, and Fugitive Letters. She is currently writing a book of prose poetry on the atomic bomb with funding from the Australia Council. I've seen it, it's wonderful. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry and an introduction and the Anthology of Australian Prose Poetry. She is commissioning editor for Westerly Magazine. Cassandra, will you read for us tonight?
Yes, I'm going to read one of my prose poems about choreography. So I got asked to write a critical discussion about prose poetry and choreography and some prose poems. So this one's called Timing. There's a nervous crackle and the deep burn of 4 beats. I inhabit the 5, 6, 7, 8, those moments before it begins. Even before I know you, I am preparing. When we meet, I tell you I'm your lemniscate, and you breathe me in a figure 8 of bright air in your lungs. Later, with my point shoes ribboned to my ankles, you reach under my skirt and pull down my ballet tights in one motion, quicker than the count from 8 back to 1. On the bed, I lift my stocking shackled feet, and in the 2, 3, 4, you strip and occupy the space between my thighs. I try to count you in, but when you place your warm palms under my hips, there's only an 8, 8, 8 in a continuous electric loop. I would like to introduce Marc Vincenz. It's been a couple of weeks since I've read this, and it's kind of lovely that it's back in my life. Marc Vincenz is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, translator, editor, publisher, designer, multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published 18 books of poetry, including, more recently, Leaning into the Infinite, The Syndicate of Water and Light, Here Comes the Night Dust, Einstein Fledermaus, and The Little Book of Earthly Delights, which is beautiful. Please check it out. Vincenz's newest collection, A Brief Conversation with Consciousness, was just released by Unlikely Books, another beautiful book in a kind of a salmony color. And an album of music, ambience, and verse, Left Hand Clapping, is forthcoming from Tree Torn Records. Vincenz is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from, join in, regulars, German, Romanian, and French. He has published 10 books of translations, most recently Unexpected Development by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist, yes, Klaus Mertz, with White Pine in 2018, which was a finalist for the 2016 Cliff Becker Book Prize in Translation. His translation of Klaus Mertz's selected poems, An Audible Blue, is forthcoming from White Pine Press. Vincenz is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He's lived all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but now lives on a farm in rural western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, and where there are, wait for it people, more black-capped chickadees, dark-eyed juncos, and ebony jewel wings than people. Marc, please read for us among these wonderful birds.
Of a feather.
Flock together.
So yeah, I'm going to read the one piece that's not in spoKe now, since it's my intro piece. I will read spoKe 8 work later. This is called The Leathery Wing of the Hyperworld. They can't erase your memory forever. They can only hold it back a bit, delay its unfolding, so to speak, and even then, fragments and figments at most. So you may forget the day she baked you a birthday cake or taught you how to tie your shoelaces, but you will never forget her face, at least until you meet in the great ultimatum. Meanwhile, good mother provides, carrying the earth's burden. Comrade, don't open that little box, a voice in my head said. The little box has fallen in love with itself. What lofty ambitions, eh? Its sole captor is blue. Who are these hapless gods? The world's finest, they once said to you. Send in the next flock of tourists. Yes, it was always like that. Necessity in case we were mistaken. All the pockets lined, the palms greased, the feathered hair quifted backward, away from the forehead, and all those wretched gloves. At 1:20 fingering the 1,000 ideas, the tramping and tumbling, the trembling and twitching, the infernal witching carried the burden of the earth, it was said. And then she who begat her bedevilishly began to lay eggs everywhere, under apple trees, in the light of the lamps, under the eaves of a hypermarket, under the leathery wing of the hyperworld. Thank you. And now I'd like to hand over our future to editor of spoKe, Kevin Gallagher. Let you take it away.
Thanks so much, Marc. Great poems by all 3 of you, and welcome to everyone. for the opening of spoKe 8. This is the 8th issue of our magazine. We are a Boston-based journal of poetry and poetics. spoKe seeks to advance a better existence in the world through poetry and poetics. Founded in response to the Boston Massacre bombing, we are strong to advance one, a global poetry that engages with or is from the world's places, cultures, literary traditions, past, present, and visions of futures. Two, an American poetry that sees the English language and literary tradition as core, but only one of many routes and paths for poetry. And three, a poetics that attempts to innovate language, idiom, sensibility, and poetic form while maintaining a public presence. We're excited to share with you our 8th issue. One of the things that we do in each issue in the tradition of one of the greatest Boston-based magazines, Origin, or at least Boston-founded magazines, Origin by Sid Corman, that used to really go deep into a handful of places, cultures, or poets. And that's what we do in each issue. The 300 pages of this new issue is just focusing on a handful of things. One is a number of new translations of Osip Mandelstam by Philip Nikolaev. I encourage you to take a look at those. Another is a whole section of new poets from Queens, New York, edited by Alina Jennings. And Alina, in our last issue, I should note, given what's going on in the world right now, she edited a special section on Ukrainian poetry. You might want to go back to that one and think of those people with all the troops looking at them right now. In addition to those, we have Marc Vincenz. We have new contemporary poetry from China, and Delmore Schwartz through essays, undiscovered work until now, and more. We're excited to share all of that with you. We also exhibit the poetry of a woman, Boston-based poet who hasn't gotten the ink that she deserved, nor the attention that she deserves. A woman named Carol Weston was both in the workshops of Robert Lowell at Boston University in 1959, but as John Mulrooney says in his introduction about her, was also down the street with Stephen Jonas, John Wieners, Joe Dunn, and others. And so she embodied the whole world of American poetry during her time, published a number of books that have never seen ink until now. A lot of her work is starting to be archived, and we're excited to share some of that. Let me start with a poet who I'm excited to meet tonight. And for those of you who don't know her, I'm excited for you to really be able to hear her wonderful poetry and the way that she shares it with everybody, both on the page when you see the magazine, but tonight with us here in the oral tradition. And that is Helen Ivory. She's a poet and visual artist. She edits the webzine Ink, Sweat, and Tears and is a tutor and course director for the UEA National Center for Writing online creative writing program. She has won an Eric Gregory Award and her 5th Blood Axe book collection. The Anatomical Venus was shortlisted for the East Anglian Book Awards in 2019 and won the East Anglian Writers by the Cover Award in 2019. The Anatomical Venus examines how women have portrayed as other, as witches, as hysterics, with wandering wombs and as beautiful corpses cast in wax or on mortuary slabs in TV box sets. Fool's World, a collaborative tarot with the artist Tom DeFreston from Gatehouse Press, won the 2016 Saboteur Award for Best Collaborative Work. Hear What the Moon Told Me, a book of collage, mixed media, acrylic painted poems, was published in 2016 by Knives, Forks, and Spoons Press. And a chapbook, Maps of the Abandoned City, was published in January of 2019 by Sir Vision. Helen's new and selected poems are forthcoming next year in the United States by Mad Hat Press. She lives in Norwich with her husband, the poet Martin Figuda. Helen, thank you so much.
Bless you. Thank you so much, Kevin. Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to see you all. And yeah, I'm going to be reading a few poems which are going to be in spoKe. Thank you so much for including me. So the collection I'm writing at the moment is called How to Construct a Witch. and it is just, well, I say just, but the cultural construction of the witch. And I'm doing so much reading, and right, so these poems come out of research, and we'll see what happens. This first poem is a quote from the Bible, and it's about, well, sometimes she's known as the Witch of Endor, but I've called her the Woman of Endor. And the Bible says, do not turn to mediums or necromancers. Do not seek them out, and so to make yourselves unclean by them. I am the Lord your God. So this is the Woman of Endor to Saul. How predictable that you should come to me now your unworldly God has turned his face away. Your dreams won't help. Your messengers have stopped their ears and tied their tongues. You may as well go supplicate a field of weeds. It's understandable your manners fail you now. Your glory lies about your feet, your kingdom thrown so heedlessly away. My weakness is I can't shut out a desperate soul. I am a human woman, though they brand me witch. When I bring up Samuel from the dead, I'll make myself a veil between the worlds. This is natural light of spirit, no dark art or seduction, and Samuel's words will be his words, even if they're not the words you want to hear. You must agree to this before I summon him. I do not undertake this without peril to myself. So she might be murdered as a witch, presumably. So you probably, though this one, you've probably seen lots of paintings of witches, you know, olden day witches kind of having a blast on broomsticks, and the whole bacchanalian scene. And some of them are kind of weird porn. And so this is an angry woman talking to a painter. How, pray, is your cowskin glue distinct from charming? You take the hide and tendons, hooves, boil them up in that scarred cauldron, and the stench enough to bid the beasts from many miles all slaver moored more quarry for your pot. Fancy keeps you company while your bed is bare. Idle hands grope for brushes are such renderings of midnight. You are haunted by flesh, are you not? I wonder if this exorcism purifies or stirs up the appetite. Paint me now astride a broomstick, my contorted face all seized by flight. Depending on my time of life, I am the maid ripe for corruption or the long-dugged ruined hag, while you, sir, are fixed rigid, the loudest voice, all penance spent. And this poem, there's a wood engraving, or a study for a wood engraving by Frederick Sandys in 1860 called The Spirit of the Storm. And the Spirit of the Storm, she's fierce. She is this Medusa-y type, and she's wild. So here I become the spirit of the storm. There comes a point in every woman's life when she transmutes into the spirit of the storm. Why not grow snakes for hair, conjure rain and lightning from your artful hands? You've earned this wrath. Don't squander it on slapdash chores and sundry empty tasks in the hollow of your living room. Get out and find a fitting auditorium. They've been opining it for years. It should come as no surprise when venom spouts forth from your breasts. Lo, you are supreme, the most debauched of all bad mothers. That's the idea of the witch as being the bad mother or the anti-mother. It's in one book that I read, she was the anti-housewife. And okay, so I have a little bit of a play here with a couple of poems, putting the witch in various scenes. This is The Witch Goes to the Cinema. You'd expect a little flickering of lights where the supernatural is involved. And when she takes to her seat, all her winged monkeys tumble from her skirts and disperse. Her public demand a floor show. So they hurtle about the cupola, spill popcorn on the velvet, cut spectral shapes in the projectionist beam. Oh, she hates to be a cliche, the way it's all got so saccharine. Perhaps some old school botanicals would help. Oleander in the nachos, a peck of nightshade in the slushy. That would do the trick. And here, the witch goes to a Halloween party. She was invited as a joke, she knows, but has resolved to call their bluff. She chuckled as she dressed, a pointy hat from eBay, some green face paint, a wart, the works. Much whispering as she's ushered to a cauldron of mulled wine, some low-slung alchemy of Merlot, star anise, nutmeg and plastic floating eyeballs. At the heart of a faux fur pentacle rug, she sways along to the Witchy Vibes playlist. By and by the guests draw near, and to the host's dismay, she is the living centre of the room. Faces press against windows, pipistrelles, moggies, every passing soul, spellbound and lush on her light. She raises her cupful, invites them, dance, and sweepingly the moon makes bright. Okay, I'm going to read you just a few other poems. They are from Waiting for Bluebeard, which are poems based very, very loosely on my childhood. You'll see how we go. So I was born. Yeah, no, I won't read that poem, but I was born. I'm just saying, or was I? So firstborn. After a picnic in the park, my mother gave birth to an egg. At the hospital, they placed it in an incubator as the midwives held vigil. Her mother said it was a tuna paste being off and didn't believe the fanciful story involving the swan and the roundabout. On the day of the hatching, the sun rose as usual, and my grandmother took her customary bus to the hospital with grapes and Lucozade. The next day, my mother took her bundle home, oblivious to the entourage of swans massing in the sky above the bus. The baby looked like any other newborn. A couple of poems now about my parents who should not have been married. The family at night. We were ragdolls after school and passed the long winter evenings like this. Father in his armchair with an unlit pipe. Mother in the kitchen pretending to eat. My sister and I with our small occupations. We saw little with our button eyes and spoke even less with our stitched up mouths. We played at playing till it was time for bed, when Mother sewed her eyelids down so we could get a good night's rest. We always woke as our human selves to find the downstairs rooms had altered too. A chair unstuffed, a table's legs all wrong. And that one time, kittens gone from their basket, the mother's bone hollow meow. And this is Sunday morning. It all comes back to the breakfast table, still set in the middle of a room which has become so vast and arid, you would need a camel train to cross it. Her father has turned himself altogether into wallpaper and is rolling further and further up the wall, away from the sidewinders in the carpet. There is a Sunday smell of washing powder and the glimpse of her mother's back as she pegs out uniforms in the oasis of grass in a far corner. She is doing her best to spoon marmalade onto her toast, but it is molten in the desert sun. A solitary crumb falls from the table and a snake sidles over all eyes. Two short poems. Please mute me if I'm going on too much. This is poem about my father who's peculiar. So this is my two fathers. When my father removes his skin, he steps to one side and tidies the old skin away with a dustpan and brush. He wants nothing more than not to make a spectacle, but my mother insists he fill it with stones. The stone father is anchored to the armchair, while the other goes upstairs to his room in a sulk. The stone father holds a television control, orchestrates the night's entertainment. The other stays asleep like a bear. I'll read you one last poem. Thank you so much for listening to me. There's a little sequence going through the book where things talk, things you wouldn't expect, like that stars and cats, the earth. And as we're heading towards winter, I thought I would do What the Snow Said. Saints watch open-eyed as I plenty the air with intolerable light. You scooped handfuls of flesh, moulding me in your image. You wished for me, guided me here with prayer and with song. Gravestones peer from my hands like rotten teeth. Go to sleep, child. I will free the world of its clanking. Thank you.
Look at all those yellow hands. Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you for sharing that. We have heard from a witch, and now it is time to hear from one of the greatest poets of the 1940s, Delmore Schwartz. Delmore Schwartz was born in Brooklyn, New York, the son of Jewish Romanian immigrants. Schwartz attended a number of colleges and universities, including Columbia, the University of Wisconsin, New York University, where he earned a BA in philosophy, and Harvard, where he completed some graduate work and taught intermittently. Indeed, one of his students was the poet Kenneth Koch. Schwartz moved to New York and began publishing in the 1930s, mainly in the Partisan Review, where he also worked as an editor and with James Lauchlin's New Directions. Schwartz was lauded as a major talent while still in his 20s. His first collection of poetry and prose is In Dreams Begin Responsibilities, which earned commendations from T.S. Eliot, Ezra Pound, and William Carlos Williams. Schwartz's later books include the book-length poem Genesis, Book 1, Vaudeville for a Princess and Other Poems, and Summer Knowledge, New and Selected Poems, which won the prestigious Bollingen Prize. Delmore Schwartz and James Laughlin Selected Letters in 1993 chronicles the correspondences between Schwartz and the influential founder and publisher of New Directions. Laughlin published much of Schwartz's work, but the poet also worked informally for the publishing house, reading manuscript and jacket copy and offering ideas for a new series for the publishing house. Schwartz influenced a number of younger poets, writers, and at least one musician. Ashbery and Lou Reed, not only Ashbery and Lou Reed, but also Robert Lowell, Randall Jarrell, and John Berryman. The protagonist of Saul Bellow's novel, Humboldt's Gift, is thought to be based on Schwartz. Delmore will be represented here by Ben Mazer. Ben Mazer's most recent collection of poems is The Hierarchy of Pavilions with Mad Hat Press. This year we'll see the publication of Spoit and Doyle's Ben Mazer and the New Romanticism by Thomas Graves. Mazer is presently editing the collected poems of Delmore Schwartz for FSG. He lives in Cambridge, and we're honored to not only have him and Delmore Schwartz with us tonight, but a number of essays and what he's about to share with you published for the first time. Delmore.
Let's see, you're unmuted, Ben. We can't hear you yet. Are you there? Hit us in the chat if you're having trouble.
I'll give him a quick call.
Okay.
Okay, Ben.
Maybe we should go to Ping in the meantime and then circle back.
Okay, sounds great. Hope you're okay, Ben. Well, we're also really lucky to have Wang Ping with us tonight. She curated this wonderful space in spoKe of contemporary Chinese poets. She also contributed some of her own great poetry and has a wonderful essay on Gary Snyder's axe handles. Wang Ping was born in Shanghai and grew up on a small island in East China Sea. After 3 years farming in a mountain village during the Cultural Revolution, mostly self-taught with little prior formal education available, she attended Beijing University. In 1985, she left China to study in the United States, earning a master's degree from Long Island University and a PhD from NYU. Her books include 4 collections of poetry: The Magic Whip, Of Flesh and Spirit, 10,000 Waves, and My Name is Immigrant, the cultural study of aching for beauty, foot binding in China. The novel Foreign Devil, 2 collections of fiction stories entitled American Visa and The Last Communist Version, a book of Chinese folklore, The Dragon Emperor, and a book of creative nonfiction, Life Miracles Along the Yangtze and the Mississippi. She's also the editor and co-translator of the anthology New Generation, Poetry from China Today. She's also the translator of Flames by Xu Di and co-translator of Flashcards, poems by Yu Yian. Life of Miracles Along the Yangtze and Mississippi won the 2017 AWP Award Series for Creative Nonfiction. The Last Communist Version won the 2008 Minnesota Book and the 2007 Book Award from the Association for Asian American Studies. The Magic Whip was a 2004 finalist for the Minnesota Book Award and received an honorable mention from the Gustavus Myers Outstanding Book Award. Aching for Beauty was a 2001 Minnesota Book Award finalist and won the University of Colorado's Eugene M. Caden Book Award for the best book in the humanities. American Visa was awarded Book for the Teenage by the New York Public Library. Her writing has appeared in numerous journals and anthologies, including the Best American Poetry, and her publications have been translated into Japanese, German, Danish, and other languages. She is a recipient of fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts, the New York Foundation for the Arts, the Minnesota State Arts Board, the Loft Literary Center, the McKnight Foundation, and Bush Foundation. She was a recipient of the LIU District Alumna Award, Immigrant of Distinction Award, Lannan Foundation Art Residency, Vermont Art Studio Residency, and many others. She's also a photographer, has some great photos on her webpage that I've been able to see, a performance and multimedia artist. Her multimedia exhibitions include Behind the Gate, After the Flood of the Three Gorges, All Roads to Lhasa, the Qinghai-Tibet Railroad, and We Are the Water, Kinship of Rivers. She now lives in St. Paul, Minnesota. I could go on about her more and more, but why doesn't she just share her wonderful self with us? And I will leave it to you to curate this wonderful space that you're sharing with us tonight of your own work and your friends from China. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. It's such a great honor. I was just shocked to see when I received the PDF. I just said, "Oh my God, I have like you accepted so many of the translations along the Yangtze and Yellow River." And so before I started talking, Mark or whoever is the host, can you unmute Professor Aku Uwu and also Professor Fu?
Okay.
Yeah, just tell them to unmute. Thank you. Yeah, good. And Professor Fu too. Fu Qilin, right. So thank you so much. And the spoke, I just looked through, it's just such a great issue. And I know this will be just like one of the most beautiful bridge across the Pacific Ocean between two great cultures and between two great languages. Chinese language and English. I'm like truly bilingual, and I do write and speak and publish in both languages. And the more I do it, the more just like wonder I discovered, right? And I can go on and on. But I would like to introduce our first reader, Professor Aku Wu. Aku Wu is a ethnic poet from, it's called Yi poet, Yi nationality from China, from the Big Cold Mountain. And he's no stranger to America because I've invited Professor Aku to Macalester College when I was teaching there twice actually, and I took him around America. And I actually also introduced him to Indian Center in Minneapolis, and he, as indigenous people from the Big Cold Mountain, from Sichuan, Yunnan area, which is the beginning of the Himalaya range, and he immediately hit he met the leader, the elder from Lakota tribe, and the two of them just became instant friends. And so LaPointe invited Aku to his tribe in Rosebud in Dakota. And since then, Professor Aku Wu has been writing poems about his encounter with the natives, and he has published several books about this encounter, and also the connection between the Yi nationality and the Native Americans. And the sections he's going to read, and I translated, it's called Spider King. And it is amazing that, like, I'm also adopted by two tribes, and one of the tribes, he blessed me with the spider legend, right? So when I saw it, I just saw the the web of poetry, right, and culture between the two people, like separated by the Pacific, yet connected so intimately through poetry. So阿库老师，请你先，我刚才给你介绍了一下，然后呢，请你先朗诵中文，然后我再给你朗诵英文，好不好？
好的，谢谢。
Yeah，你就一节一节的，你是第一节，
第一节、第二节、第三节这样。
然后我第一节你朗诵中文，我朗诵英文。
好，好的，谢谢。
开始。
蜘蛛王。吐丝是蜘蛛生命的标志和意义，但要吐多少丝，蜘蛛才算完成终身的使命，获得完美的生命结局。那些性状各异、姿态万千的蛛网，既是宇宙规律的缩影，又是生命内在的图示。据说蛛丝是蜘蛛的唾液，是蜘蛛一生走过的道路，是蜘蛛的骨血和经脉。其实蛛丝是更像蜘蛛的语言和文字，遍布世界的蛛网就是一步步蜘蛛经。
Thank you. Spinning silk marks the meaning for a spider's existence. How much silk does a spider spin throughout its life? Its webs have so many patterns and shapes. They are the mirror images of the cosmos, also the inner design of life. I heard spider's silk comes from its saliva, mapping its life journey with bones, blood, meridians. To me, spiders are more like a spider language, writing spider Bibles, with their spider webs all over the world. 第二段。
雨声和蛙声协奏，梦里有一对翅膀带我离开故乡。途中遭遇蜘蛛王在既定的位置，张开8只黑爪子，从8个方位把控我的旅程。蜘蛛是我命定的女伴，也是与生俱来的天地。生命的真谛在于一路滑地为友，从传说中神蛙的弱者智慧，到梦里蜘蛛王的强者声威， 我的生命将缺一不可。灵性凸显于雨夜，躯壳再度被遗弃。
Rain and frogs are singing in sync. In dreams, a pair of wings take me away from home. We encounter the Spider King on our way. It opens its 8 black legs, controlling my journey from 8 directions. The spider is my destined companion and enemy. But life is meant to transform your enemy to your friend. I need both to be alive, the mythical small frog's wisdom and the power of Spider King in my dream. Spirits appear in the rainy night. My body is abandoned again. 第三，
蜘蛛背上自己沉重的卵腕，不断吞吐柔韧的蛛丝。为了孕育血统纯正的后代，向传说中的蜘蛛王国昼夜兼程。相传，只有蜘蛛王国出生的蜘蛛，才有资格竞选蜘蛛王。不幸途中遭遇灭顶之灾，从此蜘蛛丢失腰部和腹部，头部做智库，而尾部用于产丝和繁殖。那死亡与复活的神话，让蜘蛛荣登神灵宝座。这是祖先认定祖灵的方式。
The spider carries its own heavy eggs, spitting soft silk continuously as it travels to the mythical spider kingdom. It is said only spiders born in the spider kingdom are qualified to become a king. But it met with death on the road, and the spiders lost the abdomen. Only head resurrected for wisdom, and tail for silk and reproduction. Through such death and resurrection, the spider became spirit and was worshipped as such by our ancestors. Thank you,
Thank you.
Professor Aku.
谢谢。
Yeah, and so 待会儿还有那个问题，有人提问，待会儿有些问题的话可以向您提问。啊，好的，我先让傅老师上来。
好，
傅老师您在吗？Mark is Professor Fu unmuted?
I believe so, yes.
傅老师在吗？
哎啊，
傅老师 ，OK，让我先说几句。Hi everyone, this is Professor Fu Qilin. He is the Dean of Sichuan University, and he is a professor and a literary theory critic, and actually also a philosopher. And so this is my first time I actually met online, and I'm very excited about his brief talk about contemporary Chinese poetry. And so let's welcome Professor Fu.
Thank you, Professor Wang Ping. It's my honor to participate in so great activities, sharing rich experience with lovers and creators of poem. I would like to give many thanks to Professor Kevin Gallagher, Marc Vincenz, and Wang Ping for extremely kind invitations. Congratulations on the publication of spoKe. I am Fu Qilin, and I teach literary theory at Sichuan University in Chengdu, where it is located in southwest of China, the central west China. It is the homeland of Chinese panda. Thanks to recommendation from Professor and nationality poet like Wu, who creates in bilingual language and expresses singular experiences full of nationality language and Mandarin. I have chances to go into Wang Ping's literary world. Professor Wang Ping is really a great poet and translator and contributes very much to transcultural communication of Chinese poems and poets. I appreciate her creative work. Today, I would like to introduce Zhao Na. Her pen name is Yuan Xing. Today, she's also online. She's an original Chinese poet in China in the new century. She studies and teaches Chinese classical literature as a professor. About 3 years ago, when she came to Sichuan University as a visitor scholar, I only viewed her as a scholar, classical literature scholar. However, very shortly I know she's a talented poet. In my course of literary theory to undergraduate major in Chinese language and literature, I invited her to share her creation of poem Da He He, a grand black river. And all of us felt moved by her tension of cultural power. The tension is expressed in general in many of her poems. In my eyes, it is tension of national traditional culture, tensions of cultural dynamics and innovations, as well as tension of personal being. In her poems, the tension becomes a metaphor of struggle, battle, contradiction between the new and the old, the heaven and the earth in a Chinese meaning, the black and white, life and death, to be and not to be, despair and hope, and so on and so forth. Here, let's come into her poems. The Red Horse from My Destiny. I put it classroom. The Red Horse from My Destiny, which is translated into English by Professor Wang Ping and published by the Coffee Review in this year. The Red Horse from My Destiny. I've been waiting for you, Red Horse from my destiny. Your dark eyes sparkling with emotions, dawn and dusk melt your golden wings. Your blood comes from love and its destruction. Your mane and light from the heart's window. No lining can hold you back. I sing from the two strings on my horse-head violin, one for despair, the other for hope. I'm the mother tied to the earth. I see you, give you my life, tend your wounds, but I can't fly with you to touch the unknown land. How can I warn you about the unknown? Your flying hooves turn dusk into lightning wheel, ignoring the tiny lives under your feet. You place yourself in front of the battle. A smile on your face, serenity behind closed lips. I love your lips closed. A hint of mustache above, mouth corners lifting, like a child new to the world under mother's watch. She let you run wild in your youth on the infinite grassland, till you reach the mystery of sky, thunder, stars, clouds. I let go the rope. A wild horse needs to live on wild grassland. I'm not the grass or the land. I'm a mountain fixed to the ground, guarding the home where you take off. I've passed many seasons alone, getting food and spirits ready for a day you reach your destiny. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's so beautifully read, Professor Fu. And we also have Q&A later, and I hope Professor Fu would tell us a bit more about contemporary Chinese poetry. And I can also talk about it myself. And Professor Aku definitely can talk more as an ethnic poet himself, can talk about him writing in Yi language and also in Chinese. And Professor Aku actually is talking about the witch, and Professor Aku actually is a wizard, a healer from the Yi tradition. And so, yeah, he's a very interesting character. So do prepare some questions for them, okay? So I'm going to read one poem, a prose poem, about making dumplings for Gary and his family in April when I was at the Kid Dizzy. It's called Dumpling 饺子, a bite for poetry. A friend just called. This friend actually is Marc Vincenz. A friend just called, and we had a long conversation about doing a series of shows on food, poetry, and stories. I listen to my vegetables, meat, fish, and spices. They teach me what to do, how to sing and dance with them, how to make magic in the kitchen. Food and poetry, we need both to live, especially when our tummy is full. Gary Snyder picked a bowl from the sink to make our granola breakfast. I wrenched it from his hands. It has an inch of mold from the old yogurt, I told him. What's wrong with that? He asked, laughing. Many students came to my poetry workshops to learn how to keep living and living well. I started growing food since I was 5, cooking and serving my parents, siblings, partner, children, students, former colleagues, friends. We laughed like crazy as I washed the bowl and handed a clean one to Gary. Kai said he does that all the time because of his eyes. Kai is a foodie too. He made delicious lunches and dinners for us. We ate outside in the shop under the prayer flags. The breeze and food brought yellow jackets buzzing around my head. Oh, don't pay attention to them, Gary told me. Don't mind the mosquito bites because they need to eat too. Students don't remember what I taught, but remember the dumplings I made with them 21 years ago. I have tons of stories about food. I'm a big foodie, a fussy eater, especially eating out. I get mad when I get overpriced bad food. Does that make me a bitch? I have a hard time trusting people who dislike food. If the food comes out bad for my guest, it's a warning sign. You're too intimidating to cook for, people say, when I complain not getting invited back. Gary Snyder, 91-year-old poet, brought a breakfast tray to my room, coffee with heated milk, granola with raisins, and buttermilk. I burst out in tears. I wanted to make dumplings for Gary. I froze the marinated ground turkey and beef and flew to Sacramento. The airport security opened my bag, touched it, and waved me by, along with the garlic leek from my garden. I took my poetry class to the reservation. For 3 days, we fished, swam, sang, sweated, and harvested wild rice. We ate what we gathered from water and soil. We made the dumplings under the prayer flags. Gen, Kai, and I. Gary drank beer, watching, smiling. He ate a huge plate with bare hands. Each dumpling is a little universe by itself. Meat, vegetables, grain, love, friendship, family. It tastes better from hand to mouth as finger food with a touch of black vinegar. Chinese food is a way of living, art, joy, nutrition, medicine, friendship, lovemaking. In the beginning, there's this silence. Plates are passed around, food taken, smelled, tasted, chewed, savored. Nobody says a word, then a collective sigh of happiness. Good food flows from the heart to hand to mouth, a circle of joy and love, and the body churns it into blood, thoughts, emotions, words, till the mind opens like a summer melon. Is this poetry like our daily life, like our breath? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Wang Ping and your friends, and thank you all of you for showing up for that. That was just wonderful. Wang Ping, do you want to take some of these questions now, and have a short discussion now, and then we'll move on to the next poet, just so we can capture this moment.
Can you unmute Aku? I have a question for Aku, Mark, or any people. 阿库老师，我的先一个问题，是那个你这个蜘蛛王跟那个美国印第安人的那个蜘蛛的神话有什么关系？ So my question for Professor Aku is, the spider in his poetry, is there any relationship? Did he know anything connection when he wrote the Spider King? Did he ever hear about the legend or the creation stories of spider from the Native American culture? 阿库老师，你可以回答。
谢谢。可能应该说是没有直接的关系。我这个蜘蛛王是完全根据彝族对蜘蛛的这个神话传说和对蜘蛛的崇拜这样来写的。
He said he did not know anything about the spider stories in Native American culture, and the worship for spiders exists for his nationalities, the Ike people. 这个时间有多长了？崇拜蜘蛛有多长的时间了？ How long is it, this worship?
应该说整个彝族的历史上都是有这个崇拜的。
那有多长时间？
彝族的历史有多长，它就有多长，应该有几千年的历史。
Okay, he said this is spider is the creation story for the Yi people and has several thousand years old, long history. So anyone has questions for Professor Fu and Professor Aku?
我有一个问题啊，王平教授。就是你在翻译，知道？
听不清楚，傅老师。
听到吗？
没有，你的问题没发出来。
就是我说这个，你翻译了赵娜的那个《我命中的枣红》嘛？这个，因为你是一个诗人，我很关注你作为一个诗人在翻译那个诗歌的时候，中文和英文之间的差异。
我基本上不会有太大的差异，这是因为跟我选择I will have to speak in English since Professor Fu, you understand English. So Professor Fu's question is my translation. How much is there anything? How much missing? Is there like a lot of differences when I translate poetry from English to Chinese, from Chinese into English? And I said, when I started translating the book, my first book of translation, actually co-translated, was like the best American poets like Allen Ginsberg, Dick Lowry, and Louis Walsh, and actually Ron Padgett, and Anne Waldman, right? And that was actually my apprenticeship, my ticket into poetry world in America. And so I did encounter a lot of difficulties. That's because I didn't really have much choice to choose to decide who I can translate or should translate, right? Because it's an anthology. But now, after 30 years of writing poetry in English, and I've decided now I'm a professor emerita, I decided to go back to my mother tongue, go back to my roots actually, interestingly, and the only way for me to go back is through translation. Translating my own work in English, from English into Chinese, and translate American poets into Chinese, and also through translating Chinese poets into English. This way I can really just like absorb the best essence, right, from both cultures through the translation. And now this period of my life, I have much more choice. I can actually choose poets I like, and also choose their poems that can easily be carried across the abyss of language and culture into across the river. And so now my life is just filled with joy and inspiration. And thank you so much, Marc, like to give me this imprint of Chinese poetry publication. And actually, I'm preparing one anthology of poets along the Yellow River and along the Yangtze River, and including, that's the two dragons from China, and then the phoenix is Xinjiang area, right? So that will be one anthology of Chinese translation poetry. And then also another translation of the anthology would be the poets from Tibet, Xinjiang, and Mongolia, right? So,
So we have the yellow dragon
yes,
and
yes. Yellow dragon and a blue dragon, basically.
blue dragon. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And
So that's
so a lot
going
of,
to be on the cover, right? That's going to be.
yeah, I hope so. And a lot of poems, actually most of the poems are already in spoke 8. So thank you so much, Kevin, for getting it out for the public, right? To view, have a taste ahead of the time. So yeah, it's really, really exciting, you know. Yep. So
Thank
other
you.
people, yeah, other people have questions.
John has a question. Go for it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do Chinese poets use meter and maybe combine the different tones in artful ways? And if, say, a Cantonese speaker were reading a poem written in Mandarin that way, would it just blow it all to hell?
No, okay, OK，我先把他的问题先翻成中文，你们两个先想一下，然后可以回答我先，然后我再先用很快的回答一下啊。刚才那个 round 的问题是，现在中国当代诗人写诗的时候，还用不用那种meter，就是说押韵啊，还有韵律啊这些东西。然后呢，就是说写的时候呢，就是如果是广东话，来朗诵的话，跟这个有什么关系？Let me answer Ron's question. At the beginning of 20th century, Chinese modernized its language, influenced by the Western language. So they abandoned the very strict meters and musicality of classic Chinese poetry, which has very, very strict rules, right? Basically, Chinese poetry, classical poetry is called songs. 词 means songs. It has very specific tunes, right? And you just fill into the tunes with words, then become poetry. right? And then contemporary modern Chinese poetry abandoned it. They started using the vernacular, right? But Chinese language, because of it's a mono sound, so and because the Chinese language has 4 tones, right? You know, like Wang Ping, right? Is second tone, and Fu Qilin is 4th tone, Qilin is 2nd tone. So our language itself, the music is already embedded, right? So no matter how we speak, how we write, the music is always forever in our heart, in our blood. And also because of our idiom, the characters, radicals, our language, the image is already embedded in the language, right? So that's why Ezra Pound has this little book called The Chinese Character as a media for poetry. He talked mostly about the image, but I want to really emphasize, because like as a poet myself, I really believe the #1 element for poetry is music, right? The rhythm, cadence, right? And I do have the advantage, you know, as a Chinese speaker, that's like embedded in my DNA, basically musicality. So, and Cantonese, actually, interestingly, Cantonese preserved the ancient Chinese language, so which has 9 tones, which actually is even more musical, right? So a lot of Chinese scholars, when they try to bring out the classical Chinese musicality, they will try to read it using Cantonese language, a dialect. Do I answer your question?
Yes, I did. You did. Thank you very much.
Yeah,阿库和傅老师，你们要不要回答这个问题？阿库老师要回答吗？傅老师
Yeah,
要
he keeps muting himself. I'll try
Yeah,
again.
老师回答，
OK，你说。
傅老师回答吧。
哦，OK，
喂，傅老师回答啊，
OK，阿库老师你要回答吗？因为你也
让傅老师回答吧。
他说不要回答，
啊，
他好像说不回答，
哦，
你说吧。
那我说吧。
哎，你说。
我说现在没有那么诗人写诗的时候，我觉得是没有那么严格的去押韵了。但是呢，很多诗人还是注意这个，不是那么严格，但是比较宽的这种韵脚，这个上还是要在乎的。另外一个是呢，它的节奏。写诗的这个汉语的内在的节奏上，我觉得更多的诗人是这个节奏上，不是更多的关注韵律上。所以呢，我觉得比原来的这个要严格的、公正的对这个押韵这个比较宽松的。
对 ，OK. So, Aku Wu said that even though very few poets, right, try to follow the strict, the tunes, right, and the meter rules, they still pay a lot of attention to the cadence and the rhythm within the poem, without the meter, without like trying to like writing the sonnet, right? Just a
Yes, yeah.
kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of cadence in his poetry, and I
Yes.
liked it very much.
Yes, thank you. Okay, well, I guess we should probably go on, right? We have anyone else have questions?
Well, you've given everyone a great taste, as you said, here in the pages of spoke and with all of this. And what I'd love to just say before we transition to our next reader is you mentioned Ezra Pound, that just to, I'm sure maybe your friends know this there, but that was really the first introduction of, Cathay 1915 and the Fenollosa essays were the first sort of introduction to Chinese poetry to a modern American poetry English language audience. And then it really wasn't until the 1970s with Kenneth Rexroth's big translations that really set another revolution of understanding, and some of those books were some of the best sellers of poetry for decades, for about a decade. And then in the late 1980s, early 1990s, Elliot Weinberger, Tony and Willis Barnstone introduced us to the Misty Poets and that generation. And I just want to commend Wang Ping for, in that tradition, introducing the English language to another generation of Chinese poets. And it really should be commended that yours is the most sort of geographically dispersed across space and ethnicity within the great country. So really want to commend you for that, and thank you for sharing all of that with us. We're going to move on to our next reader, who has already been introduced earlier by Cassandra. We were excited to have a special section of the work of Marc Vincenz in the latest issue, spoKe. His translations have appeared in earlier issues and smatterings of his poems. But if you know Marc and you know his work, it really breathes and needs an open space. And we wanted to just give him, pages upon pages to really open up some of his new work. And we're glad to do a feature of Marc's work there, which for those of you who came a little earlier, I took the liberty of titling it Typewriter First, New Poems by Marc Vincenz. I should note that in addition to a nice section of his work in this particular issue, there are also essays on his work and his poetry, not just the ones in the issue, but his work in general, by Philip Nikolaev and Robert Archambault. Marc Vincenz, thank you.
So this is the first poem in spoKe of my little selection here. It's called Something Like Courage. 1. Find a storm, find resolve, draw on its raw quality, express free from absolute objects, reserve absolute judgment. 2. Write of the object objectively, subjective, not part of the poem's objective, more acutely full of rights, full of lights. Oh yes, an old man on a merry-go-round. Agile flight, vibrant, ringed in gold and umber, sun-soaked like an effervescent chemical reaction or some illicit form of transport, a variable species. 3. Insects winging toward day, not taut or pretentious, excessively sensitive, and, dear creature, stinging, I mean no offense, a forever burrowing into subterranean airports, mostly offensive, less offending. 4. As if we had been stray bullets, or indeed pieces of buckshot, or as if the sidewalk cafes and their steaming frappuccinos, as if all the Frenchmen in the world might play the fiddle. Easy to say, etc., etc. 5. Let us find a consonant without easy listening, with a full wingspan, and to our surprise, this extremely small, slightly resistant sparrow, more than a tramp, a kind of Chaplin-esque bird, but particularly this sparrow, a bundle of good intention, holds its head well, an opening gambit. 6. I have written several masterpieces with several tragic actors. Let's call it estimated, let's call it unfledged. Concerning the matter of the rereading, well, it all has to do with balance and flight, not the progress of science. What we want to describe, a process of nothing, the quality of each thing and a recompense on canvas. I think I finally discovered my wings. So, rather unusual poem. Inedible. The ferry boat smells of something approximating sulfur and crude oil. We stand on the jetty. There's a gentle knocking as if the earth were trying to hold still. Frayed plastic bags float in the dockyards. I can read a few. Bonus, Max Best, Indran's Dollar Emporium, Cash Corner. Sanjigor's choicest, cheapest. The stones have faces here, each of them minor gods cemented in, observing the mess of foam, spill, vegetable stalks, and plastic. The skipper draws back his mouth in an uneven smile, a crate of small fish in his lumbering hands. A red snapper stares straight through us. On a day like this, everything keeps moving, everything piled under a watchful eye. At dusk, the garbage men pick up the remains, living or dead, wrapped in newsprint or cellophane in a sheen of grease or a quiet dust of air. Strangely, there's not a defiant struggle, but not even a sound. You'd expect a swell of angry voices. You'd expect the ground to break beneath your soles, but the weight rolls effortlessly into larger plastic containers where they become the food of the future. There's no precedence to buy things to throw into the mouth of empty space. Someone's always dreaming of vast profits, from the mine shafts of the Transvaal to the sandstone quarries of the Sichuan, each of them digging deeper into forgetfulness. Later, up in the mountains, the blue sea catches up with the night sky. A few thoughts. The views from the bridges high above the Taj Mahal, the deserts of northern India, the shining pools and dense scrub, the rapids and the trains. Suddenly there was a flash of light and a suitcase was crawling with insects. A small tree was at its center and growing beside thousands of mushrooms, chanterelle, polypores, and morel, the penny bun and the hen of the woods, the lobster and the jack-o'-lantern. I wanted to climb that tree, but I was watchful. For hours, I stood there pondering the life of fungi, all wrapped up in a blanket. So I grabbed the suitcase, shut it tight, lipped the words, a few nothings to remind me. You see, the tangible is all that counts. I whistled for the train. A woman said, "Saturday, next Saturday." Limbic spin. Le bonheur des bons vivants, you said, thinking I would have no idea of what you spake. You said, les légionnaires are a forgotten tribe who rose from the Kalahari. I said, remember in those days we were content with a photo of the lake, yours and theirs? In those days, the conference had subsided, the candidates in their cryogenic crypts, all that churning in the brain, slim pickings for the crows. Repeat the phrase, clearly things are not as you said. Your exhalation, not mine. Someday, you said. You'll be without them too. I hope you can achieve between gratitude and fortitude, and by the way, it's all the rage. And that eagerness, that circumnavigational route, the lake that would not. Come on, it's early. Already the plumber is on vacation, and given his height, he will devour himself. Know this, I stand for you, you who belong amongst the rocks. And despite all the obstructions, that preponderance of envy, find the turtle. Even without his maps, and likely a lack of decency, it ain't so heavy. His intentions are his own making, despite your whines. Know it will be an impossible universe. Reading signals, riding surplus. My 4 uncles and their 3 aunts, and my 3 aunts have all made it through the Panama Canal. Their childhood was upside down too. And then there's the wider effect. Their adventures have led them through pastel colors, contorting mirrors, exotic locales like the dusty wayward minaret or the lumbering berth quayside just south of Newcastle upon Tyne. But on my coffee table, there's an old scrapbook replete with dinars, zlotys, and the 100 million billion pengo. Anything that served the reliquary well in hand, from the uniform button on the lapel in the shape of a wild boar to the Charles Félicien Tissot pocket watch that served in World War I. You've saved the good furniture for this. Mother's lattice headrest and the best bread in the district. The rivalry is appalling. Who cares if Fuerteventura is in Spain or in Portugal, or if one of our ancestors stuck up a stagecoach? Who cares if you're a milk magnate or a jam baroness, or if that rifle bullet lodged in your head has still not killed you? Everything was inspired by a delegation of Oriental emissaries, but there's still something else. Having taken every liberty in the world, the leopard skin tacked to the barn door is just too much. And so, here my last one for tonight. Murmurs. More than a year now, the strange crews work 2 by 2 as the airplanes drone overhead. 10 plagues of Egypt have descended, but even now to talk of them is strangely taboo. Alligators raise their eyes to the surface, and the dome of the sky is the color of pumice. Factory stacks are still puffing away, all in the name of hard science. The scene opens like a newspaper, the landscape scarred in infinite cracks, and just at this moment, a traveler stands in the doorway. You can tell he has committed a crime. His wry grin betrays any last chance to meet the eyes. Go on, he cries, goading the crews of 2 by 2 to the prerogative of all. Sound words, he says, solid advice. His ankle boots are shark skin, his perfumed hat ripe in a peacock plume. His sheen drenches the air. We all knew it would come to this, he says, pulling 3 brand new bills from his deerskin wallet. One of the most beautiful spots in North Odophilia, he laughs. We'll be finished in a week or 2, and then they'll all descend from the hills and flood in here like a plague of rodents. Be ready, he says. They'll all try to fleece you. I nod quietly, staring at the unfinished reinforced concrete. A mouse crosses the street. A vulture circles. Thank you. Back to you, Kevin.
Wonderful, Mark. Before I try to whip the time machine out again, I want to mention something else that we have in spoKe. One of the biggest events in the world of painting in the past year and a half is the fact that a number of American museums and the Tate in London were going to do huge Philip Guston retrospectives. And they pulled them back because of timidity of the racial atrocities that have been happening in the United States. They're finally going to come back in 2022 and 2023. But they still reveal the lack of understanding of Guston and his late work by most of the art community. Most of the art community, especially in New York, abandoned Guston after he abandoned abstract expressionism, but poets didn't. And in his later work, he did lots of collaborations with different poets. And one of the poets that he worked with the most is Clark Coolidge. Clark Coolidge did a book with him and edited Guston's collected writings. For spoKe, we have an interview with Clark Coolidge about Guston in this current context, and have 30 new poems that Clark Coolidge was writing during the COVID period that we're excited to share with you. Well, we had Helen Ivory, and we have our friends from China. And so we've shown that we've been able to connect Zoom through space, but we're having a little bit of trouble connecting it through time.
Kevin, I think Ben's back on. I think we can get him now if you'll give me a moment.
Yeah, I know. Last night at the Grolier Poetry Bookshop, where we had an opening last night, we tried to beam in Osip Mandelstam because we have a whole section of translations for Mandelstam in this issue. But we also had technical and some health difficulties that wasn't allowed to make that happen. So we tried to bring in Delmore Schwartz about 25 minutes ago. And I won't reintroduce the great Delmore Schwartz and the great Ben Mazur, who has helped bring him here with us. But let's try again. Delmore Schwartz and Ben Mazur, Genesis.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'm Ben Mazur, the editor of the collected poems of Delmore Schwartz, which is forthcoming from Farrar, Straus and Giroux. And tonight I'm going to read unpublished poetry by Delmore Schwartz from the 1940s, selections from Genesis Book 2, a book-length poem that's never been in print before, but will be appearing in the collected poems. So without further ado, from Genesis Book 2. Rilke and Yeats, unknown to each other, seek with Stravinsky for the moving doll who has won out over the natural world, over the child, the sex, the need to make a living. And this is all because the artist is in exile in his age, exiled from the city, exiled from nature too, in his illusion. And in America, while these great men grew up in Europe's pain, oh, in America, art sought its bearings in an age of quake-like change after the Civil War. The decades have about them the disorder of mining camps, gold rushes. The landed gentry died or decayed or else united with leaders of industry, men on the make, aggressive, merciless, uncouth. And when the landed gentry fell, there fell in slow decay the mild genteel tradition which had a mild good taste and which now seemed a cultured aristocracy, although it never had been large or sure of its taste. The booming industrials arose and roved, brash industrialists in a hurry to wealth and power, barons of mill towns, mining towns, coal, steel, and oil towns, builders of railroads, speculators, land grabbers, carpetbaggers, prospectors, and gamblers. America was on the make, wasting and destroying the rich nature of a continent, the public which flattered its pretensions, thoughts of a careless individualism blowing up, wanting more and more, caught by the ideal of ever-mounting wealth. In this America, in this milieu, the serious artist had no place, driven to isolation, forced to accentuation of personal peculiarities, bohemianism and defiance, shocking the middle class. Hence rose the age of solitaries and exiles. Whistler went to Europe and stayed there. Everyone went there for a time and stayed, in some sense forever. And yet some stayed behind, remained to accept and to try to master the new America, blooming in grime, though Eakins suffered long neglect and solitude, and Homer in the end withdrew from all men to a small shack by the eternal sea, and the life of the sensitive rider centered about the one room in which, says Lao Tzu, somewhat too hopefully, a man may see the entire universe. In Hearst's sheet, the images appeared. John Bull and Uncle Sam were scratched in black next to the editorials. In Belle France too, and Justice in classic linen, barefoot and blindfolded like a Barnard girl playing Antigone in Central Park. Never mind what profound movements in the national consciousness drew to itself from some cartoonists' minds these easy images. The growing, fusing boy inhaled them, gaping, credulous, and like a savage could not distinguish symbol from the thing. This seems 1,000 years ago at least. The year was 1922, and the event, the Washington Naval Conference. The past may be a dinosaur, or it may be all that is seen, no matter what one sees, as one sees in the sons, the family face, and as one sees the daughter and the mother 25 years to come. This juvenile, our hero, thus for years looked at the history books in public school, and what his mind saw was cartoons and Hearst. The concrete universal makes its way, just like a chain letter. 100 years ago, I understood. Now in this darkness, oh, how many causes move in their courses underground, overseas, or flying through the air like meteors. And when we see what vilenesses they perform, how reason is offended as by chance. See yourself 9 years of age reading, delighted and amazed of Tarzan of the Apes, half ape, half man. Darwin and Huxley hold up the book for you. Child of the century, this is your life. We rode to City Island on a Sunday before my father left the house again. We saw upon the oblong billboard huge a Broadway play to the wide world advertised in most deliberate accepted lies called The Budman. And mother and father had seen it. As we rode on and on through Sunday suburbs, my mother told me what the plot contained. In Mexico, a bandit, Pancho Villa, someone like that, captures Americans, holds them for ransom, captures as the curtain rises a young man and his pretty girl engaged to marry. He a brisk, brusque, aggressive and self-confident young man, and she devoted to her crippled father, and not in love with the self-assured young man, but marrying for poor crippled papa's sake, who uses pity as his capital, like many invalids, with brutal cruelty. And soon the other young man enters, also taken by members of the robber band. He's the defeated suitor, really loved by the young lady, but offending her by poverty and irresponsibility and too much charm, indolence, and conceit. And look, it seems the bandit and the loser were buddies in the World War. He will not shoot down in cold blood the girl and the girl's father. He will restrict himself to her fiancé. So on and on as we drove on through Sunday's suburbs, onto Long Island's liner, sailing on, until the bad man bandits in the end becomes good angel, Santa Claus and Robin Hood, or Cupid finding gold mines, finding millions. For the poor young man rejected by the girl, the so-called bad man makes the girl accept his services as Cupid, showing her how cowardly her fiancé, how brave the poor young man, wrong, rejected by her, and how she was in love with him throughout. This is the theme of Robin Hood. This was the lower middle class release, to hate the brisk, efficient businessman rising to greatest power in that post-war day. But for the growing, fusing boy, it was a sign of how complex all good must be, and how the outer villain must be saintly, as how the ugly duckling was a swan. As Cinderella Rose married a prince, he learned the power of these paradigms. He learned the fascination of the plot. He learned the ambiguity of good and evil. He learned the dialectic taught by Hegel. Look at these fictions, soon were fabulous. At early silver screens, he saw the villain attack the ingenue or Mary Pickford, rescued from shameless shame at the last minute. Young man or by the stranger as the wish to make a ritual of the common mind's deepest emotions about society might at the moment need. O life performed by forms ancient and modern. What a gift to man and boy, to logos, man's intimate being, learning of life by such vivid and unmistakable cartoons. And I'll leave off there, although there's more in the issue.
Thanks so much, Ben. Thanks for sharing this also another taste of Delmore Schwartz. Never before read, never before published.
My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you.
So great to have done that here. And in addition to much more of this unpublished work by Delmore Schwartz, Ben has edited a number of fascinating essays, some on Delmore Schwartz and James Joyce, verse plays, Lou Reed, and others. I encourage you to take a look. And those are also early peeks at an anthology of essays that will be published by Mad Hat around the same time that the collected poems come out. Well, I flashed up the cover of, while Ben was reading, the cover of spoKe and a link, which I've also put in the chat, where you can get copies of it. The picture there is also a newly discovered picture of Delmore Schwartz with an unidentified woman and an unidentified man over there near the table writing. at the White Horse Tavern in 1959. I should say that spoKe is edited by myself, Kevin Gallagher, and Karina Van Berkom. Karina couldn't join us tonight, but on behalf of both of us, it's been wonderful to share some of the work that we have in our new issue with all of you, and great to be part of the Lit Balm space once again. I'll hand it back over to the Lit Balm team, and thank again to all the readers and all of you for coming.
Thank you, Kevin. And thank you, of course, Wang Ping, Helen Ivory, Ben Meza, and the ghost of Delmore Schwartz. And thank you, Marc. Anyway, as we move on, let me hand over the duties of the open mic to one of my co-hosts. Jonathan, are you there?
It's me, because Jonathan's got all of this work happening in the background, lots of sawing and drilling. So I have been handballed the wonderful open mic, and it's going to be a hard act to follow all of those features. They were really wonderful. But I know someone who can do that pretty well, and that would be John Wessick, who has been writing up a storm and has also written some poems based on some of your favorite Lit Balm folk and their Zoom backgrounds, or in DeWitt Henry's famous chair and all kinds of things. So I'm not sure if he's going to share one of those with us, but he's definitely going to read something wild and wonderful. So John, I'm going to turn it over to you first.
Okay, well, DeWitt's not here, so that means
you better
tonight,
save that one up for when he comes, hopefully.
that's
next
right.
time.
Tonight's poem is Cassandra Atherton's Hyacinth.
Yay!
The flower predicted Troy's fall, but nobody believed her. She always warns of disasters, cockatoos, stampedes, rabid bandicoots, man-eating wallabies, kangaroos with chainsaws, and home invasions of bogong moths. The danger is so acute that you can't get a submarine sandwich at a French deli. Delay appeared in Joyce's Ulysses. The intrepid mariners sang it in the Tasman Sea when fairy penguins in waterproof tiaras orbited like Trojan asteroids around his trireme. What a black swan event it was when penguins showered the crew with anchovies and pixie dust while Stephen Dedalus was lashed to the mast. Darwin does not recommend fashioning wings from flower petals. Once you're airborne, John Belushi and his killer bees, all with antennae made of springs and ping pong balls, will swarm and demand, "Where's your pollen?" Pauline was often the secret square in a game show that resembled the Zoom reading Cassandra's Hyacinth attends from a land where wombats are lawn ornaments and the sun also rises on the right. Great reading tonight. Really enjoyed it. I have a couple new books and I'll post links to those in the chat. Thanks, everybody.
Please do. We love to be in your world, John. It's an amazing world to be in. And if you do find a waterproof tiara anywhere, I'll send you my address. It sounds pretty wonderful to me. Anyway, thank you. Thank you. I was hoping to coerce Cindy into reading, but she may not be up for it, but she has a book coming out. And Cindy, what do you reckon? Yes, excellent. So can we unmute Cindy, Jonathan?
I reckon I'm up for it.
Awesome. Thank you.
I reckon I'm up for it. I don't know what to read though, because I never remember what I've already read here. And I don't like to duplicate myself, but I'm going to read a poem from the book, which is coming out from Unleash Press. And Cassandra is one of my blurbists, and she wrote some beautiful words.
Mwah.
So, and I'm honored that she will be on my book.
Fantastic book.
Thank you. I'll read a short one. It's from my I Am the Girl series, which was supposed to be a book, and the publisher does want it as a book, but now I don't really want to put these out. But here's a sample. I am the girl. Travel, version. I am the girl with the bon voyage eyes. I am the girl who is waving goodbye. I am the girl with the contraband in her backpack. I am the girl who won't take off her shoes. I am the girl who won't wash her hands. I am the girl who put the tower in your Eiffel. I am the girl who put the Cockney in your bullocks. I am the girl with Stockholm syndrome. I am the girl who sold you that bridge, which happens to be the Brooklyn Bridge because I'm in Brooklyn. I am the girl who prays for Palestine. I am the girl with a boatload of baggage. I am the girl who never leaves home without it. I am the girl who doesn't go very far. Thank you.
Wonderful. If anyone can put a tower in your Eiffel, it's Cindy Hockman, as you know. So we have Linren next, who's going to read. Jonathan, I don't know if we have to unmute
People can
Linren to
unmute
read.
themselves now.
Fantastic. And I think this will be our last reader for this wonderful sparkling evening or morning as it is here in Australia.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, this is Lin Ran.
Fantastic. Can we get you to read? That would be wonderful.
Okay, I can read myself. Thank you. I come from Singapore. I'm one of the students of Wang Ping, teacher Wang Ping. I learn from her Chinese poem. Yeah, so I will read my poem is Qingming Ban. Qingming Ban, Lin Ran. The door opened. A dog stole a steamed bun, and indeed, my sister's childhood. Little black blood splattered all over grandmother's hammer, and it shattered both rivers. Sorry, I changed another one because this one is blurred. I cannot see.
No problem. They choose
Okay,
whatever you like because we're really enchanted by it.
Yeah, I can continue now.
Yeah.
Okay. The door opened. A dog stole a steamed bun, and indeed my sister's childhood. Little black blood splattered all over grandma's hammer, and it shattered both lives. Mama was never a good cook, but great with making steamed buns. His green cotton fields, pink and green flowers shimmered. Mama was spraying pesticide as if swimming in the green sea. She was the most stubborn cotton in the hot sun. Dad came home from town on his clunking bike, a giant watermelon on the back seat. Sometimes it was broken, and the kids carried it into the dinner table. As usual, the first list was handed to our toothless grandma. Nobody never said no. We all knew the story of La Jinba. A man carried his blind mother to the mountain in vine basket and left her there to die. His little boy carried and hung the basket on the wall, warning his dad that this was for him when he became old and blind. My dad took care of his mother-in-law till her very end. Twilight was crossing over the darkened mountains. We swept the yard, sprayed some water, and breeze started blowing after dinner. We spread bamboo mats on the ground. Grandma pointed to the milkweed, told us the love story of a cowboy and a wave girl. I've never seen such bright milkweed again. Also many stars, no matter where I have traveled. Did all stars crash, turning into bulging buns in the vaults? Mother's bun is now covered with tall grass. So here I have a note. Qingming is the day when Chinese visit graves and offer food to the deceased. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a beautiful shimmering poem. You read it really well. Thank you so much. I overstepped my mark when I said that was the last one. We do have one of our favorites, Ralph, who is going to read last, and then I'm going to hand back to Mark. So Ralph, could you do something wonderful for our final moment in this grand show?
I think I'm still, oh, okay, I guess I'm unmuted now. Can everyone hear me okay? Lovely reading. So this poem is from my new book from Mad Hat Press called A Passable Man. And maybe appropriately, I'll read Last Call. What the mind fashions, what the mind does not, she says. But no way I'm being sucked into that dialectic. A freezing wind follows someone through the door and claws its way up the inside of my pant legs, finishing the job that her voice had begun an hour before of dismantling my sense of ease and rightness in the evening. The bar is half empty. This was long enough ago that you could still smoke while sitting at your table, and I light one as she slowly drains another shot of ouzo, the achingly deliberate rolling of her wrist, then the equally precise wiping of the back of the other wrist across her mouth. In fact, this was long enough ago that I had already stopped drinking, or rather that drinking had clubbed me into abstinence. And I suddenly vividly recall a night in the same bar, a more distant time and woman sitting there. Across from me, when in disgust I had watched myself strain to complete a sentence with a full 10 seconds plodding by between each sodden word I spoke. She beckons to the waitress, coral smeared across her knuckles. And now she says, the mind fashions that you will drive me home, and the mind does not fashion that you will sleep with me. If this be youth with its glory passing into shade, I think, give thanks, its dissolution overdue. She reaches for my cigarette and knocks the empty shot glass over. Thank you.
What a way to end. That was awesome. Now I want ouzo for lunch. So, or clubbed into abstinence. When you said that, I was like, clubbed into maybe absinthe would be good too. So thank you for sharing, and back to Mark and Jonathan. Mark, you're on mute, but I bet you're saying something eloquent. I can just tell by the movement of your lips.
Oh, I always forget to bloody unmute again. What can I say? Thank you again, everybody, for this wonderful evening tonight with guest MC Kevin Gallagher for the release of spoke 8, including Helen Ivory, Wang Ping, the ghost of Delmore Schwartz as channeled by Ben Mazer, and myself, I guess. And next show we have on Sunday, December 26th, which is a founders reading with special guests Elena Cui, Maxine Chernoff, and Martin Belen. And the next show after that is on January 15, which is a special feature on the life and work of Michael Anania. But more about that in due course online. In the meantime, well, thank you for this absolutely amazing, wonderful show. And I'm going to read a last final poem, a translation of Thomas Tranströmer's Minnen ser mich, or Memories Watch Me, translated by Patty Crane. And it's a short poem. A June morning, when it's too early to wake, but too late to fall back asleep, I must go out into the greenness that's filled with memories, and they follow me with their gaze. They can't be seen. They blend completely in with the background, perfect chameleons. They're so near I can hear them breathing, even though the bird song is deafening. And thank you, everybody, for such a wonderful night. I wish you a wonderful, beautiful weekend and all the delights of poetry, love, and rock and roll, or tea ceremonies, or whatever you're into. Love you all. Have a great night. Thank you. See ya.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. See you with my Christmas tree hairband on the 26th.